Emil Guillermo. Emil, Amok to you. How are you? Have you had the best, worst weekend of your lives this past week? I mean, it was a strange weekend, right? They dumped this big news on Friday, and the reason why they dumped the big news on Friday is so that you know it doesn't get a whole lot of coverage. No one reads the paper really on Saturday and Sunday, except people were gearing up for some big marches. It was that big Asian American led, inspired, I guess, march down there in Washington, which sort of got usurped by, it's essentially a voting rights, civil rights kind of march, but it essentially became an abortion rights march. And I didn't see a whole lot of coverage there. I did see some things on Twitter. Some people said, well, is it really a protest march when you have the big corporations, two big corporations backing it? I mean, there were a lot of nonprofits as well. I don't think that took away from anything, but there was real anger and real passion that was given to that march and to others across the country, because really the subject became Roe v. Wade, the overturning of Roe. It's the only issue. It's the issue that we now must, when we put on our glasses, and here I'm putting on my glasses now, not just for figurative purposes, but also for literal purposes. This is the lens by which we look at everything now. I mean, President Biden is in Europe, and you can't get through the day without talking about, well, here in Europe, we have a different view about abortion. We're a little bit more progressive. This is not going away, right? And so it was almost an interesting weekend to see how it would be raised, either at Pride. I mean, if you were part of Pride in New York, I went to New York Pride. Must have been about 4 or 5 years ago. It was great. I mean, I was part of the big Pride parades in San Francisco at the beginning in the 80s. Now, I wasn't part of it. I mean, I covered them. And I just remember being at I thought they were the very first at, the Castro. And then when they were small, these were small parades back then. And then they exploded. And then I went to my first Pride in New York about 5-6 years ago. And my God, that is a whole big parade. So, I just, it's going to come up. People are going to make that connection between abortion, the 14th Amendment, and then same-sex marriage, and then all the issues that come up under privacy. Because people say, well, abortion isn't really specifically stated in the Constitution. Well, it doesn't really have to be. When they talk about the pursuit of happiness in the 14th Amendment, that also means a pursuit of privacy, meaning Mr. and Mrs. Government, none of your damn business what I choose to do anywhere in my life, right? And yet now it seems that this conservative court wants to go into the bedroom and tell you exactly what you can and can't do, including now taking away that right of more than 50 years, the right to an abortion, which was part of the, as we know, stare decisis, the idea of precedent in legal terms. The Supreme Court, this batch, and it's funny to call them a batch, because this is this group of lifetime appointees. These guys want to go in the bedroom. They want to tell you no. They want to tell you you can't have the abortion. They want to tell you can't have that contraception. They want to tell you you are having your baby, which after 50 years of Roe v. Wade would seem slightly un-American, don't you think? So this is where we are in America now. And Kamala Harris, who is our first, she's not our first lady. She is, that was a sexist mistake there. She's a woman. I called her the first lady. Of course, she's like connected with the president. No, she is the highest ranking female in the United States, elected official. She is the vice president. She's not the first lady. Joe Biden's the first lady. And the first lady's counterpart is the first gentleman, who's the spouse of Kamala Harris. So Kamala Harris is the highest ranking female in our democracy. She is both an African American and an Asian American. And because this is Emil Muck's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable, my takes on, we call this the micro talk show of the AAPI and the AAXs. Well, we got to hear from her, right? We got to hear from Miss Kamala, and we will, we will, because we heard on the very first day from Joe Biden, which was good. He said essentially, look, I'm limited what I can do in the executive branch. But we had to hear from him. He came out and said to people right there on Friday, we're going to fight this thing. It's not over. And I heard a little bit in some sound bites of Kamala Harris over the weekend, but her first full interview was granted to CNN. I just want to play a little bit of it because she's our leader, right? She was a member of the Senate. She was Attorney General of California. She is our vice president. We need to hear from a woman, an Asian American woman, a person of color, person of mixed race. We need to hear from her. Here's what she told Dana Bash on CNN about how it struck her when she first heard about this.
And, my husband and I are actually talking about it. We have a 23-year-old, and my mother-in-law's in her 80s. Our daughter will not know the rights for the amount of time that my mother-in-law knew these rights, which is the right that should be well settled, that a woman should have to make decisions about her own body. And when we think about it, everyone has something at risk on this. First of all, if you are a parent of sons, do think about what this means for the life of going to start a family.
Whoa.
The freedom and the right to... My husband and I are actually talking about it. We have a 23-year-old.
She says, you got to think about what this means for your son. I think that was a real key moment, because now you're hearing some people talk about remedies, like maybe we should have the man who impregnates the woman, maybe require that person to bear some responsibility. One suggestion I heard from Jackie Spear on one of the talk shows this past weekend, suggesting that the impregnator put up a $350,000 bond to take care of the child that the government is forcing the woman to carry to term. And that's something that the patriarchy will fight. You just know the white male patriarchy in particular will fight and be allies with other members of the patriarchy. Although, as I say it, as I heard it and as I say it now, it sounds perfectly logical. If you're going to criminalize abortion, have a woman have a baby against her will, and then criminalize her for seeking an abortion, and then criminalize the people who help her, well, then let's get everyone in the pool, right? Let's get the impregnator to back and support the mother who must carry this baby to term, or make sure that the government is there to do something to help the woman who is forced to carry this baby to term. And as long as while we're at it, we need to think about laws that will help women who find themselves in this need. If they live in, it looks like there's as many as 26 states may ultimately, as a fallout of the Roe overturn, 26 states may criminalize abortion. So that means women in South Dakota, North Dakota, you don't have the means to get to a close state that can help you get an abortion. Will there be funds available to help those women from the government? Already some corporations are saying, well, we'll help. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that some tech companies, but I don't know about what the makeup of those tech companies, employee profile is, but do they have a lot of low-income people from Black and brown communities? Maybe they should just designate a fund and contribute to that, because I don't know if a lot of people in startups are Black, Latino, or people from low-income, backgrounds who find themselves in this. Although they're perfectly in the right, these corporations, for supporting their own employees who are hampered by this new change in our constitutional rights. But this is from Kamala Harris. Let's go back to more Kamala Harris here, because I like I said, when she says you got to think about what this means to your son and the choices he's going to have, the limits, and maybe that brings to mind the idea that he bears some responsibility if he is the impregnator.
Do think about it in the context of the fact that they wrote this decision, including concurring opinions, that suggest that other rights, such as the freedom to make decisions about when you were going to start a family, the freedom and the right to make decisions about contraception, IUDs, what this is going to mean in terms of in vitro fertilization.
So then CNN asked a question about what about Thomas's remarks in his concurrence that said we ought to go after all the 14th Amendment backed rights that are on the books now. And this is what, and then I'm talking specifically about same-sex marriage, about other LGBTQ sex related issues, about what can and can't be done in the bedroom. This is what Kamala Harris said.
Definitely believe this is not over. I do. I think he just said the quiet part out loud. And I think that is why we all must really understand the significance of what just happened. This is profound. And the way that this decision has come down has been so driven, I think, by the politics of the issue versus what should be the values that we place on freedom and liberty in our country, right? The right to privacy. Let's think of this in the context of the laws that are being passed in states. Dana, in 13 states, by my count, they will not allow a woman to have access to reproductive health and to an abortion if she is the victim of rape or incest. So let me tell you something. As a former prosecutor who specialized in crimes of violence against women and girls, in particular child sexual assault and rape, the idea that after a woman has endured such violence to her body, that she would not have the freedom and authority to decide whether she wanted to continue with a pregnancy that is a result of an act of violence is absolutely unthinkable. So,
and that's Kamala Harris, your vice president, your Asian American, your African American, Asian American vice president. And I'm glad to see her come, give these exclusive interviews to CNN. I trust there will be others, because it's in a moment like this we need to see not just leadership in the Senate. We need to see our highest ranking female leader come on and let us know how she feels, what can be done, and let her express the empathy she has for everyone in the country who's impacted by this. I know that the vice president is kind of not had the smoothest first part of her tenure. It's been kind of rocky. There's a lot of people. Well, there's always a revolving door among staff and that kind of thing. But, there were the talk about what was going on, say, maybe 6 months ago, hasn't always been positive. And she had COVID, but look, she's stepping up. This is her time. I really think this is her time. And I think we should look to her for leadership, because right now I'm hearing a lot of talk on the left, because I hear all sides. There are people on the left among progressives who are saying, why did the Democrats ever let this happen? Why did Democrats ever let this get to the point where it could easily be, the guaranteed right to abortion could evaporate just like that. I mean, I don't think people really got it. I think people didn't really understand, even when the leaked memo came out. Alito's leaked memo came out to Politico. I don't think people really understood that. But now they do. It's a shock. And I think there might be some, not really complacency, but maybe a little bit if you live in a state where the rights are somewhat protected, more so than other states like California, like New York. But, as I say, as an Asian American, I think about the Asian American women who are in Texas, the ones who are in the parts of the Midwest where it's still up in the air. Missouri, a place where I used to live for a couple of years. I just think, I just don't think enough thought was given by the Democrats so that when this came down on Friday, they really were prepared. And so here's one thing that I heard, and it's being proposed by a progressive council member in Seattle. She's trying to make Seattle a sanctuary city. She's trying to make sure that people know that if you are in need of an abortion, and say you live in Idaho, which is one of those states that is not going to, it's verboten in Idaho, verboten in Utah. So, states very close to Washington. The progressive city council member there, young Indian woman, South Asian woman, said, we gotta make Seattle a sanctuary city, which to me makes absolute sense. To have cities say, look, we are going to be abortion friendly to all women who are seeking travel funds, who are seeking a place to stay, a place to have the abortion. I think that's the next step. I mean, as I said, it's a proposal that was put forth up in Seattle, the city council there, and it was backed by progressives, unionists, progressive physicians. It's not far-fetched, and it's been done before. And I think if communities are looking to support others, I think we ought to see this kind of thing spread to other communities in the same way that sanctuary cities spread throughout for immigration, people seeking refuge. Because I think that's what's happening now. People are seeking refuge. This is one thing that in the CNN interview that Kamala Harris did with Dana Bash, they didn't really get into what the government could do, what the federal government could do. But I think this is going to have to be in the same way that the Supreme Court kicked it back to the states, so it created this patchwork quilt of good and bad throughout the country. I think we're just going to have to pick up the pieces in a patchwork quilt kind of way and try to make women feel whole in terms of their right to choose what is right for their lives, what is right for them. And I think if you don't like the way this is all coming down, blame your Supreme Court. So I wrote a column. It's in a couple places. It's soon, I hope, will be on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund blog. And I talk about, it's up there. I talk about Olivia Rodrigo. Look, ever since I didn't discover her, but look, I don't listen to pop as much as I should, or, I don't have the radio on, right? I'm listening to other things, news and Audible tapes and that kind of thing. Anyway, but, she has her, big album, Olivia Rodrigo, the big album she won the Grammy for. And it's a, she's a star. She's blown up. She's at Glastonbury in England. And there you got all the stars going out there and protest. Megan Thee Stallion, Phoebe Bridgers, Lord, Halsey, but Olivia Rodrigo, Asian American Filipino. And what do you know? She, the Asian American Filipina pop megastar in England, speaking out as a voice for her generation. Now, it's not like Kamala Harris, which is why I led with Kamala Harris. But for people who revere this 19-year-old singer from Southern California, her father's Filipino, mother's white. She's singing at this big, massive festival in England. She says, I'm devastated and terrified because of what the Supreme Court did. She said, so many women and so many girls are going to die because of this. And that statement is blunt, but true. And here's the thing. I don't know how many young women, some of whom aren't of voting age, some may be in high school age, right? I mean, Olivia Rodrigo is in that, what would you say, teeny bopper, well, below that, maybe 7 to 24-year-old group. That's the future. So you take this 19-year-old who has a semi-stranglehold on pop music, and she's talking this way at this festival in Glastonbury, England. It goes out all over the web. I see it. I pick it up. I play the tape. It's pretty amazing. I think people are realizing in this day and age of social media, they're realizing their power. I'm glad she's exhibiting it, because you talk about where's the Black, Indigenous, people of color power. It's in entertainment. It's in culture. It's in our pop culture, right? I mean, we don't have any Black, Indigenous, and people of color in the highest offices in the land, but we have Black, Indigenous, people of color in the top 10, the top 20 of, the hot hits chart, or in the pop charts, or on the hip hop charts. And guess what? More young people who need to know this stuff, because this is their lives, they're listening to these guys than they are listening to the people in Congress. That's the reality. Who's listening to Olivia Rodrigo? All these people who showed a remarkable sense of, yeah, I got it. I know what's happening. I'm not dense, because they know that ultimately, if you're a young woman, they're talking about your body. Congress, or rather the Supreme Court, when they took away a right, and Kamala Harris referred to this in the soundbite I played. She has a daughter, and she has an 80-year-old grandmother, and the 80-year-old grandmother has been given, or has been exposed, or has had a longer time with these rights than the young people. Meaning, you know how people talk about, well, this next generation, they're never going to be as rich as the previous. Well, forget about the economy. Just think about pure rights. And this is a stark fact about comparing someone in their late teens and 20s with their grandmother in their 70s or 80s. Granny had more rights than the young people. That doesn't really sound like America's trending in the right way, right? So here's Olivia Rodrigo. She says, I'm devastated, I'm terrified. So many women and so many girls are going to die because of this. And then she dedicated the next song to, quote, the 5 members of the Supreme Court who have showed us that at the end of the day, they truly don't give a... It rhymes with hit. About freedom. She says the song is for Justices Alito, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh. We hate you. We hate you. Which, even in my ears, sounded a little shrill. But then Rodrigo invited up British singer Lily Allen, and they sang the song F You. And it was surprising. I'd never heard of the song F You before, but everyone sang it like they did. I mean, look, I'm of the vintage of, Country Joe and the Fish, the Fish cheer. Give me an F, give me an I, give me an S, give me an H. But at Woodstock, it was give me an F, give me a U, give me a C, give me a K. This was the Fish cheer for a new generation. Primarily women, but don't think, you guys out there, that you are off the hook from responsibility because of this. You are responsible. And believe me, there are radical feminists who will not let you off the hook. There's already talk about having men, the impregnators, post a $350,000 bond to raise the children. So this is impactful for all. So there was Lily Allen, there was Olivia Rodrigo. They were singing the song F You. And it wasn't like an angry protest moment. It was more with this rollicking sense of defiance and exuberance, as if these young women, and there were mostly young women I saw in this clip that was played on Instagram, it was as if to dare the court to stop any woman from exercising her reproductive rights. That was what I heard. I mean, Olivia Rodrigo, right? She was like really getting into it. Excuse me. It was this happy, defiant, exuberant sound, because here's the thing. What you come away with is, if a girl wants to get pregnant, or if a girl gets pregnant and doesn't want to have the baby, she will seek an answer. She will seek an answer. And that's the problem. Because what does that mean? That means she will go through, well, here in America, she'll go through the hardship. She'll get to that place where she has to go. You put up the obstacle, you put up the constitutional obstacle, and she will find an answer. Because this is her body. This is her reproductive rights that the court's messing around with. Like I said, to see all the bodies of people dancing, and it was men, women, but the camera showed a lot of women. They were all with this exuberance, like saying, you can't tell me, Supreme Court. Of course, the Supreme Court is, and this is the fight. The fight's not over. But then I saw that tape, yes, this past weekend. And then this weekend, this other thing happened. The Filipino American community in the Bay Area took its turn celebrating Philippines' independence from Spain, which is really kind of weird, because it's independence from Spain more than 100 years ago, 1898. It happened in June, and so they're a little late celebrating it in the Bay Area, but the celebrations have happened throughout the world. But a couple of things about this. First of all, here we are celebrating Philippine independence from Spain on a weekend when you have fewer rights than you did last week. And then the other thing is they're celebrating independence from Spain, which is kind of a quaint historical, sentimental notion. And yet Filipinos displayed their enduring loyalty to Catholicism and colonialism on that very day, Sunday, as they do every Sunday. You might say our chains still show. But this is what kind of hit me in the face, that, as a Filipino American, right? Our brown Filipino skin is as rich as ironic rust. Because, yeah, that rust color, right? It's a rich color. Because think of this. This was the first weekend after America actually took that big step forward, being more like the Philippines with its Spanish theocratic hangover. If you think about it, overcoming Roe v. Wade, the U.S. left it to the states to make it illegal to have an abortion. And as a result, at least in 10 states, abortion is now illegal. Utah, South Dakota, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Kentucky, Alabama, and their laws their constitutions look a heck of a lot more like the Philippines than an ideal sense of an American constitution. Think about that. And, here's the thing. I don't even want to bring up Philippine independence from the U.S. because that really doesn't come up until July, World War II. And, that's a kind of a funny story because Philippines was a colony of the U.S. And I think maybe that's why they celebrate independence this late in the game, because then they can combine independence from the Philippines and independence from the U.S. That's why you have it on June 26th, because July 4th is when that day is when the Philippines was granted independence by the U.S. after World War II. But you think about what this means right now. There are some states where the abortion laws more readily mirror the laws in the Philippines than they do an ideal state where we revere freedom and democracy, and for the last 50 years, the reproductive freedom of women. There's a part of the Philippine Constitution, and look, abortion has been unconstitutional, against the law in the Philippines for more than 100 years, recodified in 1987. If you go to Article 1, Section 12 of the Constitution, it could have been written by Samuel Alito or Clarence Thomas. The state recognizes the sanctity of family life and shall protect and strengthen the family as a basis autonomous social as a basic autonomous social institution. It shall equally protect the life of the mother and the life of the unborn from contraception. The natural and primary right and duty of parents in the rearing of the youth for civic efficiency and the development of moral character shall receive the support of the government. That's a law that essentially makes abortion illegal and allows for mandatory prison time for any women who get an abortion and for any person who helps them. And that's the sad reality in the Philippines. And yet, you think of that song that Rodrigo sang, the FU song. The United States pretty much laid down the line. They said, look, it's not a constitutional right. We're going to leave it up to states. And some states are essentially adopting that same kind of position as the Philippines. And women are saying, F you. We're going to have that abortion. And this is what that means. Because we have the Philippines as an example. It means that there will be illegal abortions, that they will be commonplace. You stopped it with a law from being legal, but it doesn't stop the desire or the need to have an abortion. In the Philippines, 37% of all births are unwanted, and 54% are unintended. 4 out of 5 abortions are for economic reasons, according to the Philippines Orphanage Foundation. And there's no easy, safe way out of this unless a woman seeks out an illegal abortion. And they do. They do. I mean, illegal abortions are so commonplace. I mean, you can go to what they call the sorry store, where you can be sorry for one more thing. Now, sorry, I think means corner. I think the sorry store, SARI, but it ends up being SORRY. Back alley abortions, back of corner stores, non-medical, unhygienic situations, commonplace in the Philippines. Now, you want a number? I in researching this, I saw all sorts of numbers. A low of like maybe 2 to 400,000 in 2008. I saw the World Health Organization placing an estimate as high as 800,000 abortions a year. I mean, this is tough because illegal abortions don't generally get reported, right? Because they're illegal. Hard to get a number. But the demand is there. Law or no law. So, if you want to see what the future is like for America, just look at the Philippines. Look at what happened because of their theocratic approach to life and society. The Catholic Church rules there, right? Even though they kicked out the Spanish, they kept the church. The church throughout the U.S. reigned there. They kicked out the U.S. or the U.S. left. Catholic Church still there. And it leaves the Philippines in this kind of weird, like, two-faced situation. Well, abortion's illegal, but it doesn't mean you can't get an abortion. You shouldn't. It may not be the safest. And maybe only the rich people can afford it because among the people who are offering abortions, there are some angels and there are some devils. There are people who will help and there are people who will pray. And it's all about $1. And that's the way it is in the quote unquote black market when it comes to abortions in the Philippines. And if you don't think that's going to happen here, I mean, unless there's some kind of support system where the angels triumph and say, look, we're going to help people get to where they need to go. If you're in Oklahoma, we're going to help you get to California. We're going to help you get to a sanctuary city. We're going to help you with funds. And then what do they do when people create these other laws, the ancillary laws that say, hey, wait a minute. Are you an aider and abetter? You're in trouble. That's criminal too. In some states, it will be. But this will be the United States of America, where some places will look like the 1930s and 40s, and some places will look like a damaged version of modern life. But that's where we're heading. Or that's where we are. We're there now. And to the degree that people can hang together, create empathy, cause mass movements, maybe we can change this in a generation. I mean, because that's how long it could take. Kamala Harris, in her interview, talked about we got an election coming up, the midterms. Maybe this is what the Democrats need. But like I said, it's the Democrats, they deserve a lot of blame too for letting it get this far. And the progressives are banging their heads saying, we need to take action. We got to get the unions involved. And we have this system that's run by money. And unless you can match dollar for dollar the dark money that is backing abortion, by dark money, I mean the contributions, the donations that come from out of nowhere for mostly conservative causes. Unless you can match that dollar for dollar, it's a tough fight. It's a tough fight in America. So, but this is what we got. You want to look at the future, look at a small country like the Philippines, where there's no constitutional right to an abortion, and hundreds of thousands of babies are aborted anyway. So what's it going to be like in America? Especially in a Trump, kind of post-Trumpian kind of ethics system, where, I mean, this is the good thing about the January 6 hearings, because the January 6 hearings say, hey, look, these were the ethics at play during January 6 and to the lead up and the aftermath. Do we like the way that we're playing together? Do we like how we are honoring the law? Do you like how people are trying to bully and use their might and their power to over influence our democracy to the point where it's not democracy anymore, it's just downright autocracy? I mean, I think that's one of the problems. And we clearly have one person to blame for bringing out this notion that, it's okay. It's okay. Let's see what happens. We'll go to court. We'll sue. I mean, that kind of attitude, it comes out in the wash. That's a really New York-y, kind of Donald Trump-y kind of attitude. And that's what we have here. So it sort of makes you realize that, boy, laws, we need those laws. Those laws exist for a reason. We need that sense that gives a woman a right to choose, and says, yeah, it's not the government. It's not the government to tell a woman what to do. A woman has a right to choose. In fact, if you're a conservative and you have a problem with this, here's how you can side with your progressive friends. You can say, well, I don't believe in abortion. If it were my baby, I'd have the baby. But I don't feel like I have the right to tell Olivia Rodrigo to have a baby. I don't feel like I have a right to tell that Asian American woman I saw on NBC the other day. I don't think I have a right to tell her she must have the baby. She must carry the baby to term. Not my business. That's her business. I don't have a right to tell gay people that they can't marry. I don't have the right to tell gay people what they can or can't do in their bedroom. I don't have any of that right. But you know what? If they want to do it, that's fine. No, I wouldn't do it. And this is how conservatives can find that narrow path. I prefer not to do anal. This is not me. I'm quoting someone. I'm quoting an imaginary conservative. Well, I wouldn't do it that way, but if they want to do it that way, I'm not going to stop them, because I believe in that kind of freedom where I don't proselytize, right? I mean, they don't have to believe what I believe. I don't have to believe what they believe. We're cool. We find the cool lane. If we find the cool lane, then we can all peacefully coexist. But if I'm going to tell you, you got to do things my way. You got to do that. No, you don't have to do things my way. That's a problem. See, and that we got to work that out. It's going to take us 40 years. I mean, things move slow. Things move slow in America. In the meantime, your state law is going to look a lot more like the Philippines Constitution on abortion, the new model for the USA. Hey, we're all Filipino kind of, right? And what's my response to that? Well, you know, Olivia Rodrigo, she can sing the response. Love that Olivia Rodrigo. What a talented 19-year-old girl. No, actually at 19, she's now officially a woman. Driver's License. That was the song. I like catchy, great songsters. And I love the fact that her father is Filipino and her mother was white. Because that's sort of the way, right? Father Filipino, mother white. I mean, like, my wife's white, I'm Filipino, my kids are like Olivia Rodrigo. They are probably better at soccer than her than they are at musical scores. They can score a goal, but they can't read from a musical score. Oh, actually, I take that back. They did play flute in junior high, I think. They're musical. They can do karaoke. But I'm sure they are better soccer players than Olivia Rodrigo. I love my kids. This is a kid thing, you know. And my kids were, I think they were protesting wherever they were. They were out there. What a week, huh? And the January 6 hearings, more January 6 hearings tomorrow. That's going to be kind of interesting because they say they have new evidence. I don't know what kind of new evidence, but they have new evidence, so that's going to be interesting. So we talked about Kamala, we talked about Olivia Rodrigo, we talked about how the U.S. is more like the Philippines, and isn't that a kind of ironic twist? Because the U.S., more like, not the Philippines, more like the U.S. The U.S. is more like the Philippines. Oh my God. How can that be? All right. Tomorrow, on tomorrow's show, I'll talk about what I did about Pride. I mean, I don't want to extend the show, but I do want to talk about Pride tomorrow. And I'll talk about the new Filipino. It's like, I think it's becoming a thing. I think if you're Chelsea Handler, it's becoming a thing. So that we'll talk about tomorrow. In the meantime, read my columns on the ALDEF blog, aaldef.org/blog. Read me on the Inquirer.net if you are a Filipino caught in the diaspora. I mean, there's millions, right, who must leave the Philippines to go work. And then the diaspora also includes those who have immigrated or have left the Philippines, going back to when my father left the Philippines in the 20s. Inquirer.net, INQUIRER.net, and search for Emil Guillermo, the North American columnist over there. And what I talked about today, you'll find there. So, what else is going on? Oh, a lot going on. You know, I saw the Warrior games on replay. I just like watching them again. Just the highlights, because you just without the pressure of, oh, are they going to win? Are they? You just watch them, and then you feel, oh, what a great team. And then the draft happened, and they got this kid, Baldwin, right? Baldwin Jr., PBJ, his name is. 6'10". Sounds like another Kevin Durant if he's got a shot down. But we'll see. We'll see. Sounds like the Warriors at number 28 in the draft got a good one. Giants fans, man, the Giants are frustrating. I like them. They seem good sometimes, but then they lose to the worst team in baseball. How did that happen? I mean, they killed them 9-1 Saturday, and then they just get demolished by them on Sunday. The lesson: pay attention to the real stuff. The diversions, push aside, and focus. Focus on trying to do the things that might make a difference. I know baseball's not making a difference right now. All right. I got my sounders up. Got to have a sounder if you're, the talk show business. Hey, listen, so we're going to wind down. Thank you for joining me. Check out the columns. Check out the website, amok.com. I'll put the recording. You can click on the recording. If you want to see the others, you can also go to Facebook. A lot of people don't like Facebook. I don't know. I found myself, it's like in a comfortable pair of shoes. Feels more comfortable than MySpace. So I'm still on Facebook, emilguillermo.media, or go to my Emil Guillermo personal page. But emilguillermo.media will get almost all the videos. amok.com, I told you. YouTube, go to my godforsaken YouTube channel, which, is just there. If you're a YouTuber, you can say, okay, I'll give them a sympathy click. Please do whatever the algorithms say, to like or to friend or that kind of thing. Elbow bump. Twitter, @Emil Amok. I don't really do Twitter that much. I mean, I'll post things to say, hey, this is a thing I just did. But I'm not hyper Twittered out. But you can check out the videos and the links on Twitter @Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. And so, I had an instance of a friend, sad story, and had trouble with a family member. And sometimes, it always boils down to self-esteem. It always boils down to how you feel about yourself. And when you notice someone feeling troubled, or you notice someone just not being as positive as you think they should, as you know they should, I think you should suggest a little loving kindness meditation. Because I feel like the answer is always a form of self-compassion, a form of self-love. Self-love? No, not that kind of self-love. I mean, be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up for things that aren't your fault, that you have no control over. That always is the answer, because the feeling of low self-esteem, low self-worth, always comes out of a kind of shame. Always comes out of a kind of, no, I'm not worthy. I can't. Yeah. Believe me, I know this. I know that. I don't really belong here. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here in your presence. Look, no. Take some pride. Tell the person to love him or herself. And if that person is you, just take this hand, put it here, take this hand, put it here. Just give yourself a squeeze. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Till next time. Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Live. Mahal. Kita.